Lucy Letby had a fair trial. The convictions are absolutely solid. There are no grounds for appealing any convictions. She's responsible for placing more babies in harm's way.
Dr. Dowie Evans helped put one of Britain's worst ever serial killers, Lucy Letby, behind bars. As the prosecution's main medical expert witness, his evidence was crucial in convicting her. But in the last year, that evidence has come under scrutiny as the campaign to free Letby grows. Now, in an exclusive on-camera interview with The Sun, Dr. Evans insists there is no way she is innocent.
I think the campaign to try and prove that Lucy Letby is innocent is, frankly, astonishing. It seems to be led by people with the least amount of information about the cases. I think it reflects the shock of having to come to terms with the fact that a young nurse deliberately harmed babies in her care.
Court has heard from the nurse accused of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 more.
The UK's worst child killer in modern times.
The 4th woman in British history to be given a life prison term.
They include serial killers Myra Hindley and Rosemary West.
Lucy Letby's unimaginable crimes made headlines around the world. After 2 trials and 2 attempts to appeal, she is serving 15 whole life sentences for the murder of 7 babies, anonymised in court as child A to P, and the attempted murder of 7 more, B to K. All premature babies entrusted to her care at the hospital in Chester, where she worked. She will die in prison.
You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies.
But a year on from her trial, a campaign to free the former neonatal nurse is gathering momentum. In May, The New Yorker unveiled a 13,000-word article suggesting Letby had been the victim of a monumental miscarriage of justice, turbocharging the rising amount of amateur sleuths on social media.
That nurse that was accused of murdering a bunch of babies. Sounds horrible. She didn't do it.
Word on the prison streets that Lucy Letby is in fact innocent.
Published in the middle of Letby's retrial over the attempted murders of other babies, the article had to be blocked for legal reasons, further fueling doubts amid claims of a conspiracy. Some conspiracy theorists have even suggested millionaire Mike Lynch's yacht was deliberately sunk in Italy earlier this year because the tycoon was preparing to bankroll Letby's defence. A number of politicians.
Do you think there is reasonable doubt? I think there's more than reasonable doubt.
And experts have since come forward to lend their weight to the campaign and challenge the medical evidence used against Letby at her trial.
My job is to tell the truth about what I think has happened. I just don't believe this wild hypothesis based on no evidence whatsoever that somebody inflated the stomach enough to kill the baby.
But much of the campaign's attacks are focused on the evidence of one expert, Dr. Dowie Evans.
There have been a number of people who are doctors and experts, particularly on neonatology, who have criticised the nature of the evidence that he gave.
A neonatal specialist, his extensive reports formed the basis of the medical case against Letby, and he gave evidence on behalf of the prosecution during her trial. He's since faced a barrage of criticism on social media, yet despite the attacks, he says he remains confident of her guilt.
I've no doubt that Lucy Letby was responsible for the murder of these babies and for the attempted murder of other babies. This is why.
Dr. Evans debunks each of the theories of the pro-Letby campaign, one by one. One of the most damning pieces of evidence in Letby's trial was the use of a shift chart, showing she was the only nurse present in 25 cases babies died or collapsed. The table, which covered a 13-month period between June 2015 and 2016, showed that while the 38 other nurses were in attendance on just a handful of occasions, when suspicious incidents occurred, Letby was at the scene of all of them. But statisticians claim there are a number of issues with it, in particular that it doesn't show other suspicious events or deaths when Letby wasn't on duty. The Royal Statistical Society has even described the chart as worthless.
That chart is a complete crock. It does not show anything. It only shows that when Lucy Letby was on duty, she was on duty. That's all it shows. It doesn't show anything else.
MP David Davis is also among those who have seized on that as evidence of a flawed prosecution.
You're not taking on board all of the extra deaths. Just you've picked out half that happened to fit with Lucy Letby's shift schedule.
It's not that the statistics were worthless, they were irrelevant. If statistics were relevant, I'd expect the prosecution to engage a statistician. If the defence had felt that the prosecution was using statistics wrongly, I'd expect them to engage a statistician. They didn't. The evidence was not based on statistics.
Postmortems were carried out on 6 of the 7 babies who died. 5 were concluded as having died of one or more natural causes, and in the other, the cause of death was certified as unascertained. Letby's supporters have questioned why expert paediatric and perinatal pathologists found no evidence of foul play, and why none of the methods Letby used to kill the babies, such as air embolus and insulin poisoning, were identified.
6 of the 7 babies who died at postmortems. Those babies who died from injection of air, i.e. air embolus, would not be expected to show any abnormality confirming the diagnosis. The importance of the autopsy was that it ruled out infection as a cause of death, it ruled out hemorrhage as a cause of death, and it ruled out a congenital problem as a cause of death.
Pro-Letby campaigners say Dr Evans relied solely on a medical paper written in 1989 by Canadian expert Dr Shu Li to back his theory that the babies had been injected with air because they showed discoloration or rashes before they died. Dr Li gave evidence in Letby's defence at her appeal, saying none of the rashes were characteristic of so-called air embolism. But Dr Evans also included in his witness statements research from 18 other experts, and his evidence was peer-reviewed, backed up in court by 2 more, including Dr Sandy Bowen.
First of all, I reviewed air embolus in detail and presented 18 published papers in relation to air embolus in babies, and I wasn't questioned or challenged about this paper by the prosecution or the defence. I presented 18 research papers discussing air embolus in babies, not just the one involving Dr Lee. And I broadly played down the significance of the skin discoloration as part of the air embolus because the local staff had not realised its significance and had not documented the information at the time. So my diagnosis of air embolus was not dependent on discovering this peculiar rash described by Dr Lee.
Letby was one of only 2 nurses on shift when 2 baby boys, child F and L, each received a highly dangerous dose of synthetic insulin. The prosecution suggested Letby had poisoned them through their liquid nutrition bags and showed medical test reports in court to support that theory. On the stand, Letby herself also accepted that the babies had both been given insulin but denied any involvement. Experts have now come forward to say that kind of insulin testing is notoriously unreliable and the readings could have been wrong.
I was very satisfied that the tests were reliable, and I claim no specialist scientific expertise regarding how insulin is measured. The evidence given by the scientists I thought was excellent. What's important, of course, is that the insulin values were very, very high, higher than anything I've ever seen, and a value of the other, if you like, non-active insulin called C-peptide that was virtually unrecordable. So I was thoroughly convinced that this could be explained only for one reason: these babies had been given insulin.
A key piece of evidence relating to the collapse and death of baby C was an X-ray showing a swollen stomach taken the day before. At trial, Dr. Evans says this was most likely due to deliberate pumping of air into his feeding tube. But as part of an investigation, the BBC's File on 4 claimed Dr. Evans had changed his mind about this after the show revealed that Letby was not working at the hospital when the X-ray was taken. Experts have also cast doubt, suggesting there could be other explanations for the swollen stomach.
I think they failed to recognise that the baby had a bowel obstruction, which was causing the problems, and that needed urgent surgical opinion and probably surgery to save the baby's life.
You're saying quite clearly here you believe this baby died of natural causes. How confident are you of that?
I'm very confident because of what I've read.
But Dr. Evans says the post-mortem showed no evidence of a bowel obstruction, and new evidence presented to him at the trial made him believe Letby had injected baby C's bloodstream with air to kill him.
This baby would not have died but for Letby's interference. What I'm sure occurred was that he was stabilising. She was on duty. It was coming up to midnight. She went into his nursery. She injected him intravenously with air. That caused immediate collapse and also explains why resuscitation failed. That is what I am now confident happened to this particular baby.
The neonatal unit suffered an outbreak of bacteria lethal to babies at the time when infant mortality rates spiked between 2015 and 2016. The bacterium Pseudomonas aeruginosa had colonised taps in the nurseries. This led to a theory that the spike in deaths was caused by a superbug.
I was unaware that they'd isolated Pseudomonas organism, which is a very deadly pathogen for small babies. But Pseudomonas was not responsible for the deaths of any of these babies. 5 of the 7 babies who died had no evidence of infection. 1 of the 2 babies who were infected was infected prior to her admission to the unit anyway. If Pseudomonas was in the bloodstream, the fatality rate is very high, but that baby would show evidence of infection.
Letby's supporters say the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital was under-resourced and not capable of caring for so many tiny and vulnerable babies. They insist Letby has been made a scapegoat, and Letby herself said during her trial in 2023 that the deaths were the result of understaffing and poor hygiene at the hospital.
There's no evidence that she was a scapegoat in any way or form. There were concerns that she was present during each of these collapses, and that they became aware of that from early on. But what the doctors failed to do was establish a diagnosis, and that was the concern. And add to this a managerial system which is, quite frankly, appalling, absolutely dreadful. And I went on record following the verdict that Cheshire Police should explore the principle of corporate manslaughter, which they're now doing. The deaths that we've discussed are all the result of deliberate harm caused by one rogue nurse, Lucy Letby.
Dr. Evans insists that in their rush to attack his evidence, many are ignoring the damning circumstantial evidence against Letby. Prosecutor Nick Johnson-Casey described it at trial as powerful, insisting Letby was a constant malevolent presence. They drew similarities linking her victims and her crimes. Thousands of pieces of evidence were gathered for the trial against Letby, some of which was found in a police search of her home. a diary with initials of the babies Letby killed written on the pages of the dates they died, a collection of confidential hospital documents and handover sheets kept in bags under her bed, and a keepsake box that contained sensitive information about babies she'd murdered. And crucially, confessions, a number of jumbled handwritten notes on which Letby had scribbled, "Please help me, I did this. I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I can't do this anymore," and described herself as horrible and evil. During the trial, it also emerged Letby tracked parents of some of the babies she murdered, searching for them repeatedly on Facebook. Her internet history showed she even looked at baby A's mother the first morning after she killed him. Letby said in court it was a normal pattern of behaviour for her. The prosecution said Letby got excited and behaved inappropriately, sometimes even trying to befriend the parents. After the murder of child I, she sent a sympathy card to the parents and took a picture of it before the funeral on her phone. Letby agreed in her police interview that it was not normal for a nurse to send a card, and that this was the only time she had done it. As early as February 2016, colleagues became suspicious of Letby. Several consultants testified about their concerns over the link between Letby's presence and the spike in inexplicable serious medical episodes. In court, paediatrician Dr. Gibbs said doctors had gradually come to realise that something very wrong was happening. He said the collapses were unique events that I'd never seen before in my career. There was a common factor, and that became clear to all of us. TV Dr. Ravi J. Ram, a lead paediatrician at the Countess of Chester, caught Letby trying to kill a 25-week-old girl baby Kay, who he'd delivered just days before. He told the jury he felt extremely uncomfortable at the thought of Letby being left alone to look after her, and walked into the nursery to find her standing over the incubator, doing nothing, as the little girl's oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. It's believed Letby dislodged her breathing tube. When, after returning from a holiday in Ibiza, Letby killed 2 baby boys, O and P, part of an identical set of triplets within a day of each other. Dr. Stephen Breary, head consultant on the unit, told the jury he found their deaths deeply distressing, as they had been in a good condition and seemed to be on a healthy pathway that would have allowed them to go home. Yet he noticed in the debrief Lucy Letby, who was on shift at the time, didn't seem overly upset. He demanded she be moved off frontline duties and told the court after Letby's removal there were no more events. It was the same staff doing the same job, and there were no more sudden collapses. Further disturbing evidence against Letby has emerged at the ongoing public inquiry into her crimes. Richard Baker KC, representing the families of 12 of the babies, said breathing tubes were dislodged at an unusual rate during Lucy Letby's placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital. The inquiry was told tubes were dislodged in less than 1% of nursing shifts, but an audit found there were recorded incidents in 40% of Letby's shifts. Letby is launching a second appeal against her convictions for attempted murder, and her barrister is planning a case for the Criminal Cases Review Commission. But Dr. Evans insists there has been no new evidence that hasn't already been extensively tested at her trial or thrown out at her first appeal.
I've no doubt Lucy Letby is guilty. And it's not just because she was there and she was in sole care of most of these babies, but their pattern of collapse was something that one simply does not see in looking after little babies. She was hiding in plain sight.